Hey everyone, it's Leonard here. I want to tell you about a woman named Dorothy Callahan. Dorothy was 73 years old, retired school teacher, taught 4th grade for 31 years in a small town in Ohio. She had pictures of her students going all the way back to 1971 lined up on a shelf in her living room. Every year, she'd walk to the corner store in the morning for her coffee and her newspaper. Every single morning, like clockwork, for 22 years. And then she stopped walking, not because she didn't want to, not because she got lazy, but because every single night, starting around 2 in the morning, her legs would wake her up with cramps so violent, she'd scream into her pillow so she wouldn't wake her neighbor through the wall. By morning, her calves were so bruised and knotted, she could barely put weight on them. She told me she started sleeping in the recliner because lying flat made it worse. She stopped going for her morning walks because she was afraid of what happened if one hit while she was outside, alone, half a mile from her apartment. She came into my office after 6 months of this. 6 months! And here's the thing I need you to understand, because this is the part that still keeps me up at night. 30 years later, the fix was simple. The answer was sitting in practically every health food store in the country. And nobody had told her. Not her previous doctor, not the urgent care she visited twice, not the pharmacy technician she asked. Nobody told Dorothy. And I almost didn't catch it either. I practiced internal medicine for 44 years, retired about 8 years ago, though my old patients still call me on my cell phone, which my son tells me I need to stop giving out. I've seen diseases that would make your hair stand up. I've watched hearts stop and restart. I've held the hands of people in their final minutes. But some of the cases that haunt me most are the ones that weren't dramatic. The ones where someone suffered, really suffered, quietly, alone, in their own home, for months or years, over something that was entirely fixable. Dorothy was one of those cases. When she came into my office, she sat down carefully, like her legs were made of glass. She was dressed neatly. Teachers always dress neatly, I've noticed, even in retirement. And she had a little notepad where she'd written down her symptoms in her best handwriting, as if she wanted to make sure she didn't forget anything, as if she was afraid I wouldn't believe her. That notepad broke my heart a little. Every night, she said, before I could even ask. Not sometimes, every night. For 6 months. She showed me her calves. The muscle on her left leg had a hardness to it, a rope-like knot just under the skin, that I could feel when I pressed gently with 2 fingers. She winced. She said the right leg was worse. Now, leg cramps in older adults, nocturnal leg cramps we call them, are not rare. After 65, a significant number of people experience them regularly. Most chalk it up to just getting older. Most never mention it to a doctor because they assume nothing can be done. That assumption is wrong. And it costs people years of their lives. Not in the dramatic way, not on a chart, but in the quiet way. In lost sleep, in lost mobility, in lost independence, morning walks to the corner store. So I asked Dorothy the questions I should have been asking every patient over 60 for years. What did she eat? Was she on a diuretic, a water pill? Had she had her magnesium checked recently? She looked at me blankly at that last one. My what? Here is what I need you to understand about magnesium, and I need you to stay with me for this part, because most people glaze over when doctors start talking about minerals, and they miss the most important piece. Magnesium is not a vitamin, technically, it's a mineral, but it functions like a master switch in your body, particularly in your muscles. Your muscles need magnesium to relax. When they contract, which is what a cramp is, a muscle contracting and refusing to let go, magnesium is what signals them to release. Without enough magnesium, that signal gets weak, garbled. Your muscle seizes up and holds. And here is the cruel part about getting older. Your body becomes progressively less efficient at absorbing magnesium from food. At the same time, many common medications that older adults take, and I mean very common ones, water pills for blood pressure, certain stomach acid medications, even some diabetes medications, actively deplete magnesium from your system. So your body needs more of it, and the medications you're taking for other problems are draining what little you have. Dorothy was on a diuretic, had been for 4 years for her blood pressure. Nobody had ever mentioned to her that this medication was likely pulling magnesium out of her body faster than she could replenish it through diet. Nobody told her. I ran her blood work. Her magnesium came back low normal. And here's something I want to be very clear about, and I say this because it took me too long in my career to learn it. Low normal is not the same as fine, especially with magnesium. Blood tests for magnesium measure what's in your blood, but only about 1% of your body's magnesium is actually in the bloodstream. The other 99% is in your muscles and your bones. So by the time the blood level looks low, you may be significantly depleted in the tissues that actually matter. Dorothy was depleted. I will tell you in a moment what we did about it, but first I need to tell you the part of this story I am not proud of. About 12 years before Dorothy walked into my office, I went through a period in my own life where I was not sleeping well. I was in my early 60s. My wife, Patricia, had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. She's fine now, 20 years out, tougher than anyone I've ever met. But at the time, I was functioning on fear and coffee and stubbornness. I was waking up at 3 in the morning with leg cramps that made me bite down on the pillow. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was dehydration. I started drinking more water. I told myself it was the amount I was on my feet at the hospital. I did not once think to check my own magnesium. I did not once think to examine whether my own body was depleted. I was too busy worrying about Patricia, too busy keeping up appearances at work, too convinced that I was fine because I was a doctor and doctors are fine. I suffered with those cramps for almost a year. A colleague of mine, internist, good man, we used to eat lunch together on Tuesdays, happened to mention magnesium one afternoon, offhandedly, in the context of a patient he was seeing, and something clicked. I went home and took magnesium glycinate that evening. The cramps were significantly reduced within 5 days. Not gone entirely, not immediately, but reduced enough that I slept through the night for the first time in months, a year. I had suffered for nearly a year with something that cost me $12 at the pharmacy. I tell you this, not to embarrass myself, though perhaps I deserve a little embarrassment, but because I want you to understand that this is not about being uninformed or careless. This is about how easy it is for anyone, including doctors, to overlook something simple when we're frightened or distracted or just too stubborn to ask. You may be doing the same thing right now. I recommended she speak with her cardiologist about whether a magnesium supplement was appropriate given her blood pressure medication. I also encouraged her to gradually increase magnesium-rich foods, leafy greens like spinach, pumpkin seeds, almonds, dark chocolate in small amounts, things she could incorporate without overhauling her entire life. I also want to be clear here. Magnesium is not a miracle cure, and it is not the answer for every person with leg cramps. Dehydration causes cramps. Poor circulation causes cramps. Certain neurological issues cause cramps. You should not take a supplement and assume you've handled it. You should talk to your doctor. You should get blood work. You should not just buy a bottle and hope. But here's the thing. If you haven't had your magnesium checked, and you're over 60, and you're on a water pill or a stomach acid medication, you should be asking your doctor about this at your next appointment. Write it down if you have to. Take it with you on a notepad like Dorothy did, in your best handwriting. Because your doctor may not think to ask. Not because they don't care, but because the appointment is 15 minutes long, and there's always something more urgent to address. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, as they say, and leg cramps don't squeak loudly enough. You have to squeak for yourself. Dorothy came back to see me 6 weeks later. She walked in, and I noticed it before she said a word. She walked in like herself, not carefully, not like her legs were made of glass. She sat down in the chair, without wincing. 3 weeks in, she said, I slept through the whole night. I just laid there in the morning, and I couldn't believe it was light outside already. She had started walking to the corner store again. I asked her how it felt. She looked at me for a moment, and then she said something I have remembered ever since. She said, "Leonard, I thought that was just how the rest of my life was going to be. I thought I was just going to hurt every night until I died. I had already made my peace with it." She paused. I didn't have to make peace with it. I think about that a lot. How many people are sitting in their homes right now, having already made peace with something they didn't have to accept? How many people woke up last night at 2 in the morning, grabbed their leg in the dark, and thought, this is just how it is now? How many of them have already quietly surrendered parts of their life? The morning walk, the trip to the grandkids, the sleep they haven't had in months, because nobody told them they didn't have to. You do not have to make peace with it. So here's what I'm asking you to do. If you are having leg cramps, regular ones, the kind that wake you up, the kind that make you afraid to walk too far from home, write that down and bring it to your doctor. Tell them you want your magnesium checked. Tell them you're on this medication or that one, and you've read that it can deplete magnesium and you want to discuss it. Be specific. Be insistent if you have to. If you are younger and you are watching this because your mother or your father has been complaining about cramps, call them tonight. Ask them if they've mentioned it to their doctor. If they haven't, encourage them to. Help them write it down if you need to. And if you are someone who has already been living with this, already made your peace, already quietly adjusted your whole life around a problem you assumed was permanent, please hear me when I say this. Not everything that hurts is something you have to live with forever. Some of the things we carry longest are the ones with the simplest answers. And the saddest part of my career, the part I carry with me into retirement, into my quiet mornings with coffee and the news, is knowing how many people never found that out. Dorothy found out. You can too. I'm Leonard. Thank you for watching.